Thanks for tuning in to this very special Christmas edition of the Echo Stop Live podcast. We have an amazing show for you this morning, and we're glad that you tuned in. To each of you and your families, a very warm, safe, and fabulous Christmas holiday season. Well, good morning, Mobile, and all of our friends along the Gulf Coast. We're so glad that you decided to join us today for this special edition of the Echo Stop Live podcast. I'm Kevin here with my good friend Curtis.
How's everybody doing? Hey, Kevin, what's up, man?
You traveled. You're sitting a little closer than normal.
I am, man. We are a bit close, aren't we?
We are. It's okay. We're going to make it work. But guess what? I got a surprise for you today.
What's the surprise, Kevin?
I'm going to give it away because I'm surrounded by some amazing men who have decided to join us today for a topic about faith-based leadership. And there's just the thought that's been going on in the community, right? So for the past couple months, we've been talking about how people can get involved in our community and what we can do to change things and make a difference. And we've been talking about involvement, but what I'm really seeing is how do we revitalize spirit in our community, right? And so what better place to be than at this beautiful campus of Three Circles Church to talk about what it is we can do with faith-based leadership. But before we ramble,
let us. What we're doing?
Well, you're listening to the ramble, but I really want to start over here on my side and just have all of our podcast partners here today kind of introduce themselves and just talk about where they're from and you know what it is that's brought them here to this faith-based leadership podcast, other than our invitation. So we'll start over here with you, sir.
Yeah, well, so my name's Tim Simmons. I serve as one of the pastors over at Coastal Church, which is located in Daphne across the bay. And then we have a campus in Bay Minette. And I'm just excited to be here. So I moved to Fairhope in 1977, so I've always lived on the Gulf Coast, always loved it, have a heart for it, and just appreciate you guys inviting us, Three Circle hosting it, and just the opportunity to figure out how to make some sort of difference in the community that we all love.
So, thanks for being here, Tim.
Yep.
My name is Justin Walker. I serve as a student pastor here at Three Circle Church Midtown. I'm born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. I'm a Mobile guy, played ball here in high school, also at the University of South Alabama. But I have a heartbeat for youth in our area. And, I don't want to just talk the talk, but I want to walk the walk and be the hands and feet that help this next generation to get to where they need to be. So that's my passion. That's my heartbeat.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Micah Gass, I'm the campus pastor here at Three Circle Church Midtown, this campus here. Then also the executive director of our nonprofit that serves alongside Three Circle Church Midtown, called For Midtown. Just looking forward to being part of this conversation, looking forward to not only continue to proclaim the gospel, but to embody the gospel in a community and see lasting change. So
that's so powerful. We're going to skip over to this side over here.
Awesome. My name is Chris Bell. I'm the lead pastor here at Three Circle Church, and we have some campuses across our area. And we just love our community. We love this region, and we want to, as Micah just said, we don't want to just have gospel beliefs. We want to have gospel behavior and gospel culture. And we want to infiltrate our culture with what we believe is the great news that not only should be believed, but also lived.
Yes,
and so that's kind of what we're all about.
That's a good deal.
Good morning, brothers. I'm Marvin Charles Lee Jr., lead servant and proclaimer of the Stewart Memorial CME Church here in Mobile, the heart of the Avenue and beyond. And I also wear the hat of community organizer for Faith in Action Alabama, the Mobile Hub, where we're honoring God by building community as well as creating pathways of opportunity for all Alabamians, especially here in Mobile. I'm sitting at the table because I care. I'm sitting at the table because I see brothers that care. And I'm sitting at the table because I not only see brothers that care, but also brothers that can make a change. So let's do it.
Outstanding.
That's awesome. Well, you really hit on something classic there, which is we've been talking a lot of things, and we've had a lot of people email the show. By the way, echostoplive@gmail.com. Send us your email. We'd love to answer you, if not during the show. Obviously, this is a special edition, but we'll certainly get back to you. We can't do this without the community. So as much as we want to participate, we want the community to participate. And I think what's unique about this effort that we have through EchoStop and what's really manifested itself, evidenced itself here, is that there are a lot of people in the community that care. And so today, within the faith community, what can be done? What is faith-based leadership, and how does that really impact, leading the way? And Pastor Lou, if you want to take that first, you said that you're here because you care, and we're all here. How do you take your community action to the street with a faith-based leadership mindset?
From our faith tradition, we realize that every leader God called, God chose, and God selected, it was because that leader or those people were facing a crisis. David faced the crisis of Goliath. Moses faced the crisis of Pharaoh. The Hebrew boys faced the crisis of Nebuchadnezzar. Even Christ faced the crisis of the Roman Empire, as well as disbelieving faith community people in his day and age. We are facing a crisis. That's why we were called. That's why we were chosen. However, what makes our time a little bit more difficult is we're living in a day and age where people have options in their walk, options in their calling, options in how they carry themselves. So not only are we walking to set the standard, we're also walking in a way that brings people into relationship so that they will understand that they matter just as they are.
Can I jump in real quick? And I'm sorry.
You just knock me over when you
I
jump
know,
in.
right? What I want to, let's be as candid as we can on some of the issues that we face in our community and in our nation. Crime, violence being the dominant factor, youth violence especially. Yeah. And we all know that we're dealing with issues that are not the issues that we dealt with years back. We all are at least somewhere in our early 30s and above. I won't call out any other names
Early
about
30s.
that.
Boys right here.
But the reality is that a lot of things are not the way they used to be, but yet they are. And one thing that we know that cannot be absent is our intentional effort to bring God into the conversation. And that's why we're here today. Talk about the absence of God being in that conversation as we try to address violence.
That's good.
Yes. So, how do we bring God into the conversation more in the community as well?
Right. Well, I love what you just said, both of my brothers here. So for one thing, you can look at the situation we're all in with technology. You're right. One thing that hasn't changed from biblical times is humans. We're humans. We have human behavior. But we have access that we did not have. We have the ability, like a megaphone, technologically, to do things we could not do. We can either be intimidated by that and see that as a hurdle that we can't jump over, or we can go, no, that's an opportunity. And because the very same channels that are offering all sorts of evil and ability for violence and bullying and all that is also a channel for us to send the message of what we believe, the gospel that changes people.
That's right.
And so I believe that as well. Mike and I were talking earlier about the fact that it's really easy to sit back and say, well, top down, like let's put the issue somewhere else but on us. But I think all of us in this community that love this city, love these actual streets, this concrete, these trees, this square footage, in this town and area that we love, we got to own this thing.
Absolutely.
Right? It's got to start with us.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And to me, that's what faith-based leadership does. You mentioned the word called. And I think a faith-based leadership for me means it gives me the courage to lead because I'm not the highest authority. Mm-hmm. Well, I think what faith-based leadership for me is that line in the book of 1 Corinthians 11. Paul said, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And it gives you the courage or the call or the conviction to lead in such a way, because essentially, as a faith-based leader, I'm not the highest authority. My logic, my philosophy, it's in introducing God into the conversation that I think gives somebody the courage. It gives someone the humility and that conviction and call to lead in our community.
And if I can finish up my thought real quick.
Yes.
when I was sharing about the challenges that our heroes of the faith faced, it brings us to 2022 by calling out the things, calling out the challenges and the situations that we're dealing with, and making sure we're in a place where we can actually affect change, not only with the confidence and conviction, but with the tools necessary. And us sitting at the table today is saying to our community, we want to align ourselves with teammates who have the tools for us to win as a team, not for us to shine as individuals.
That's a great thought.
And I want to throw this out to our audience who's watching this show and thinking to themselves, well, this is a great conversation. Let me tell you something about how we got to this conversation before the conversation, because my good friend Curtis and I have had this talk for a long time, and a few years.
Yeah.
So in case you don't realize it, you're watching a podcast that's hosted from within not only a government entity, but within a police department, which is unheard of, right? And so we are trying to have this conversation that nobody ever has, and we had this conversation amongst ourselves where we said, well, what should we talk about? And I said, let's talk about something real. And people say that, but let's actually have the conversation. And then we had this conversation a few weeks ago. It's like, what's really driving inside me is this spirit for God. And it's like, can we say that more? And I'm like, we should say whatever we're led to say, because I can tell you this, the restraints that we put on our conversation up to this point haven't worked.
Right.
They're not talking about the spirit. They're not talking about reality.
Yeah.
They're not talking about the things that are really happening because somebody might perceive it a certain way. Let's attack the perception with reality, and let's talk about what's really happening. And God is real. This whole conversation is real. Our faith is real. It's what's driven us here. So the answer is yes. And I credit that awesome comment that you just made, Pastor, because this whole purpose is real.
Yes.
And the reason we're sitting here demonstrates that we're not afraid to have that conversation. And not only that, we've had community days, we have things, we're getting out in the community. So that kind of takes me to the next thing, which is, what do you see? How do we change a culture? I mean, I'll let you tag on this one first. We have youth who think one thing, perceive one thing, and are influenced by a lot of different things. How do we change culture where we can bring faith-based leadership into that culture?
Yeah, so one of the things you just hit on was being real. This past Wednesday with my students, I think was the realest moment I've ever had, where I just spoke from the heart, and I kind of checked them on some things. Like, we come here week after week. Why are we here? Like, I'm not holding back the gospel. And I shared with them how serious the gospel is to me, because we can give them all of these things that we could come up with, all these events and all these things, but if we hold back the thing that's most important to them, that they don't even know that they need yet, we're doing them a disservice. So I'm going to be just as loud about the gospel as you are about what you love. And one of the things is I can be loud about it, but I also have to change my method. And I think a lot of us have to look at it from this approach. Are you approaching our youth with a megaphone mentality or a telephone mentality? A megaphone is one way, and so many years we've been, this is what we believe. This is what you should believe. You need to believe it because we told you so. And so you have a megaphone. You can't hear what they're saying back to you. But if you pick up that telephone and you say, hey, I want to tell you what I believe, but I have the patience to listen to say, what do you believe?
Yeah.
How do you feel? And this Wednesday, we laid it all out. And they told me, they're like, hey, we feel like you're checking us, but at the same time, we need it. And we love you for that. And it's a hard conversation, but it was needed. And one thing about the youth of today, they can spot fake really quick.
Yeah.
If you're fake and you're not real, they can call it out within a mile. But if you're real and you share it with your heart and they can see, you have to be transparent.
That's right.
And let them know, I'm not perfect, but this is what I believe and this is why I believe it. And not only just say it, but also walk it out. When they see that you're real and they see that you're actually doing it and they see that you can listen, you can get a long ways with that rather than just saying, hey, do this because we said do it and we know it's best for your future.
It's good.
So, Pastor Kess, I'm going to bring you into this because you sat next to me, so that means you get the super hard question.
He can handle
I can see it on your face, but what I hear him mentioning is really goes to the core of building relationships. So how important is building a relationship with the youth in the community and the others in the community that are associated with some of the things that we want to change, so that we can help bring them into a relationship so that they can be part of the influencing?
Absolutely. Well, I think those relationships are what actually give the ability for sustained change to take root, because there's no way that you're actually going to experience lasting, sustainable community renewal unless it's not an us and them, it's a we mentality. And so it has to be that we get to know the people in the community that are leaders, the people in the community that won't stand for things happening in the community that are not acceptable to them, and being able to empower people that are leaders in the community that frankly need to experience that life change so they can really be on the right track to stand with us and what we see happen in the community. That cultural change is not something that's going to happen overnight. And it really is going to take us as churches, us as Christian nonprofits being able to ask, is our methodology changing the mission field? Because I think sometimes, like Pastor Chris said earlier, if we're not careful, we can have a really strong theology of conversion, and we should. It all starts with heart change, and that's what gives us the eyes to see what needs to happen in the community. But as far as reaching the community and locking arms with the community, we also have to have that approach that says, how are we going to reach the people here? Right. And if we have practices that aren't reaching this generation, the practices have to reach a new iteration to reach them, where they not only attend the community events we do, they can feel part of a community because it engages them in a way that's relevant, where we don't change the message, we change the methods.
So it's not just show up, it's interact. I mean, that's awesome.
Something you said too, when you said culture, for me, we can define that in many ways. Sure. But let's simplify that and just say Christian culture. How do we push out Christian culture that crosses all cultures? Because a lot of times people say, well, I won't go into that zip code because I don't understand the culture. But where does your Christian understanding and your culture of Christianity go beyond just that fear or that concern that you don't connect with the person or the community? Pastor Lou, you guys do some amazing stuff with Faith in Action. You go into communities, you knock at doors, and you try to talk to folks about how do we address violence? How do we come together as a community, regardless of the zip code you live in, but come together and just spread the gospel?
Well, one thing you just said is, how do we make Christian culture real? Well, for me, I make it real by remembering my own faith and conversion experience. And the thing that keeps jumping out at me is, love one another as I have loved you. If we're going to reach our communities, if we're going to reach our brothers and sisters, we've got to remember we haven't been saints all the days of our lives. There's stuff in our closet that we don't want the U-Haul to bring out. We don't want anybody to go sniffing through, because they will find out that we're not all that we think we are. Right. Because of that mentality, because of that understanding, it allows me to go back into some of those communities that I might have been a participant in, to say, hey, if it can happen for me, I know it can happen for you. And I'm ready to walk with you in this thing. But most importantly, I'm also ready to just meet you where you are. Right. That's why I'm here at 9, 10 o'clock on a Friday night, to meet you where you are, not to force you to get to where I am, but to say, hey, my love for you, my love for the God that I serve, my love for your well-being pushes me out here beyond my own comfort zone to connect with you, so that you'll know that you not only matter, but you're significant and you're important. Because if God took the time to remind me of my importance, then I ought to take the time to turn around and say, hey, if God did it for me, I know he can do it for you. And there are pathways to get you there.
Great thought.
Isn't it kind of miraculous, actually, when you think about it? And you started off commenting on, leadership coming from the Bible. And I'm thinking, and you guys can obviously quote this a lot better than I can, but there's hundreds, or at least several dozen stories that I can think of, parables and stories where, people pushed beyond their comfort level. If they had turned around and said, oh, I'm a little scared to do that, or that's not in my comfort zone, things would have turned out a lot different. I mean, actually, every great miracle worked out because they went past their comfort zone and they were faithful to what God had led them to do. And I feel like if we're talking about faith-based leadership and we go where God leads us to go, then who knows what will happen. And this is where I'm at. Like, can we predict the future? No, but we can be good stewards of the time that we've been given and the mission that we feel compelled to follow through with. And I think that's why we're here, is like, we know that what's been happening in the past, although there's been good and valiant efforts, and there's a lot of good things. I don't want to write off everything that's happened and say, oh, that's never worked. Sure. But where we are is not acceptable. Where we need to be is the goal. And so we want to take things to another level. So we have to push. And we've had this conversation at the office. Like it's time to get a little comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's the only way we're going to eradicate the complacency and really get focused on making change. And so, I mean, opinions here. What does a healthier city look like when we bring spirit and faith into the community?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind, you were talking about the Bible, talking about leadership. One of the great leaders of the Bible was Solomon in the Old Testament, and he has a line that I love. He said, a clean stable is clean and fine, but a dirty stable means there's a harvest. It's this great line. And so, and if you look under what he's saying, when he would walk through the stables around, if he saw mud and dirt everywhere, on one hand you'd go, oh man, this is messy. And he's going, no. Messy means something's being done.
That's good.
Right.
We all want a showroom, and what we have is a construction site.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so what we need is to get to work, but getting to work is messy, and we can't be afraid of messy.
That's right.
That's the thing. Relationships are hard. All of us sitting right here at these tables, we all have different backgrounds. We're trying to figure it out. It's messy. It is a worthy mess, though, isn't it?
Right. Wow.
And so I love that we're stepping into that. And I just think we can't judge things by, oh man, this wasn't a clean cut line. It's not going to be, but it's going to be worth it. I mean, we've got generations of kids and teenagers that this is on the line. It really is. The stakes are pretty high. And so we've got to be willing, I think, to, like Solomon said, get the stables messy, have the conversations.
In this world of separation of church and state, you know, which is funny when you think about it, because, I mean, I think it's funny anyway. But how can we work together as church and state to facilitate a safer community? What does that look like?
I think there's a misnomer and almost a myth out in society in general, is that you can't combine the two. And I remember telling some folks a while back and thinking I was going to get fired when I said it, so I'll say it again. And if I get fired, I'll go fishing. But I'm keeping the church.
Amen.
If you want to take the state back, that's fine. But I got to go back to the thing. But there's nothing that says you can't combine the two. The founding fathers, and I'm not a legal scholar, so far be it from me to quote, constitutional law, but there was different intentions with how it was in being forced. And if you have to remember where they came from and what they were actually securing the freedom. That's right. Not prohibiting the freedom. And so, we have to remember that we just make it available. And the relationship is the conduit by which we can bring people to say, and you said something awesome, is like they got to see us do it, and they're going to call us out if we don't, is essentially what you were saying. And so what to y'all, in the few minutes we got left, I mean, what does a healthier city look like?
I think it's keeping it simple, loving your neighbor as yourself. It's a simple statement, but a lot of times we look at who is our neighbor and we think it's just the people that look like us, talk like us, vote like us, dress like us. But that's not just your neighbor. If you get outside of that comfort zone, or like you're just talking about being uncomfortable, get outside of that comfort zone and start loving on people who don't look like you, who don't smell like you. Some people who don't talk like you. Go and love on those people, because loving the people that look like you and do the same things that you do, that's very easy. But when you get uncomfortable and get your hands dirty, if you take the towel and throw it over your shoulder and bend down and wash feet. I mean, so many people are so eager to get up on the stage and have the microphone and talk, but I'm ready to go. I got my pail in the back with some water. I just want to wash some feet because it's personal. It's one microphone, but it's a lot of feet that come in this church. So that's where my heartbeat is. I want to wash feet.
Love it, bro.
And if we can wash feet and just love on our neighbors, I think we'll have a better community around us.
Good word, man.
And I think it's really important, and I know y'all talked to this in the podcast, and I know Curtis and know his heart, and I'm sure y'all talk about this as a team. We were talking about this earlier, that we have to be able to figure out how that we can see the communities that represent the city as smaller parts representing one whole. And we have to be able to link arms with one another when we can and need to. And I think that synergy has to be there. I think the city needs to see that. But yet, like Curtis often says, the city is only as strong as its weakest community. And so I think we need to be able to know that we're going to have to be able to empower one another and stand with one another, things we do together, but things that we can only in each community is there going to be the synergy, the leaders, the influence, the resources to change that community. And so we have to be able to identify how do we make one another better without abdicating our individual roles in our community to change our block we're on, that we have a theology of place to say, not on my watch, not on my street, not in my community. And so we have to be able to lock arms when we can, but not ever be free of. We just got finished teaching through the book of Nehemiah not too long ago at our church. And if you read through Nehemiah, there's this sense of the wall represents and encompasses the whole city. But yet you have all these people groups, all these local leaders that said, well, I'm going to get on task here. This is my block. This is my street, to use modern day terms, right? And I think until we get engaged on that level, city renewal will always be theoretical. Like it's got to become personal. It's got to become individual. It's got to become like this is our community. And with that mindset in place, I think we do it not coming in with a top-down approach, but a servant-hearted, neighbor-loving mentality that says, how do we do this together in this zip code, in this area?
And I think faith-based leadership along the Gulf Coast. I mean, every community on the Gulf Coast has. It's not just changing this city. We have to change the culture along the Gulf Coast so that this city can be empowered to change. I mean, what thoughts do you have as we close out here?
That's a great thought. Well, the words you're hearing work.
That's right.
You hear relationship, which I love, because I think we'll all agree. We've all come to the consensus the gospel of Jesus works. It works in communities. It works in rebuilding cities. It works in changing hearts. And Chris said that behavior of the gospel is critical. And the gospel is a gospel that goes. And so it's encouraging to be sitting among men who say, I'm willing to go. I think what they're saying is so accurate. A healthy community is a community that's more interested in the health of the whole than the selfish sum or the part.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what this conversation is kind of igniting and facilitating.
Well, that's awesome. Well, as we wind it down here for this Christmas edition, if you will, of our Echo Stop Live podcast, I do want to take a second just to thank you all. Not only do we appreciate you being here? I want you guys to know that, and I hope I can speak on your behalf.
Of course you can.
You did sign a release that allows me to do that. You don't know what I'm going to say.
Crayon, right?
But I already live a life knowing that I have a debt I can never repay, right? It's how we're here in our faith. But I also want you all to know that we are indebted to you guys for coming and not being afraid to sit at the table and have just a real conversation. And also when the camera stops and the microphones go, that you're going to the streets, that you're going to the community, that you are grabbing your pail of water doing what the Bible has already told us to do, which is the phenomenon that I get confused at because the roadmap's already been laid out and we get strayed from it. And when we come back to it, it's like, oh, well, this makes sense. Well, yeah, it's been tested many times. And why do we get confused? But thank you all for being with us. Certainly appreciate you. We'd love to do this again if you guys were willing. I know our communities need to hear from us as faith-based leaders more than anything. This needs to be the loudest voice. And so thank you for doing that. Just a couple of quick reminders as we close out today that the Echo Stop Live podcast can be viewed on Facebook and also on the YouTube channel at Echo Stop Live Podcast. But also that we have an anonymous tip line. If you've watched this, if you know something, you have a suggestion, or you see something and you're just kind of afraid to call anyone else, that you would reach out and actually dial this tip line for us. It's 844-251-0644. That's 844-251-0644. It's an anonymous tip line. Tune in every Friday at 8:30. We want to bring you more and more real conversations as we move forward and hope to bring the community in this partnership. It truly takes all of us. If you see something, don't just say something, do something. And so with that, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a great holiday season. Stay safe. And yes,
huge honor.
Thank you for all you guys and what you're doing. It's very inspiring to be a part of the conversation.
Curtis, I'm going to let you
Oh, parting words.
say some parting words, my brother.
No, just thanks again. You guys are awesome in what you all do. And Pastor Gaston, we didn't get a chance to really speak on it, but for Midway is something that really has to be told.
coming in part two.
It is coming in part two, along with Faith in Action.
Yeah.
But God, thank you so much just for being the men that you all are in the gospel, and help us and continue to help us move this city forward.
So thanks again for tuning in. You will see more of us, not just on this podcast, but in the community. We're believing in a better community, safer community, and we won't stop till we get there. So you'll be seeing a lot more of us, and we appreciate you. And until next time, stay safe and have a great holiday season.